our nation.
I think some bad people started that caravan. I will seal off the border before they come into this country.
30-year-old Officer Antoine Tony had been shot while responding to a call. Officer Tony was rushed to the hospital, but he didn't make it.
The Democrat Party has become an angry, ruthless, unhinged mob.
Someone's going to get hurt. It's not going to end well.
It's all about Donald. It's not about anything else.
Joe Biden. We call him 1% Joe.
Second, who needs no introduction.
The real president.
We are looking at putting in a very major tax cut for middle-income people. And if we do that, it'll be sometime just prior, I would say, to November. Don't forget the big tax cuts, and we're going to get you more.
Here, it's coming. And Emily loves the muscle music, the muscle cars.
Welcome back. Thank you so much, you guys. I'm so excited to have another great show in store.
Here it is.
Here we go.
It took a little longer than I thought. Wait, and you were just telling us before the cameras turned on that a tree fell in your car when you were going to a Bon Jovi Not concert? yesterday.
Yes, not okay. So in law school, driving down 280 south of San Francisco on our way to a Bon Jovi concert, I'm driving, 5 girls in the car, and a eucalyptus tree in a huge storm fell completely, landed on my SUV. It was like the pungent smell of it. Was the most insane story of all time. And then I 4-wheel drove around it and
So you
went to the
survived
concert
this,
anyway.
obviously. You were like, I'm getting to this concert.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So you still went
Come
to the
hell or high
show?
water. Yes.
The tree came down on your SUV and you still went to Bon Jovi.
We still went.
More
Probably
on that.
turned around.
We're going to have some.
I
wasn't meant to. In fact, we're going to have some muscle cars on Fox Square a little later. So that's a little
And there's
tease.
already pizza here.
So
You
excited.
smell it on the way in?
It's amazing.
It's amazing.
All right.
Fox and Friends.
We begin with a Fox News alert. More than 2,000 migrants defiantly pushing ahead, still trying to get to the U.S. border after risky river crossings into Mexico.
Some are left stranded on a border bridge as the migrant caravan marches forward.
Griff Jenkins is live at the U.S.-Mexico border in McAllen, Texas, as agents prepare for the massive wave of migrants. Griff?
Good morning, guys. That's the McAllen Hidalgo port of entry behind me. Anyone from the world can come, claim asylum. If you have merit behind your claim, you will be possibly granted a hearing before an American immigration judge. That is the promise of America, but yet hundreds, if not thousands, come daily and illegally cross this border. Yesterday, we witnessed smugglers bringing people over, and the Border Patrol was on them. They turned back to Mexico and crashed their pickup truck into the river. The smuggler got away, but yet the people he was bringing got in. And if you look, they're Chinese nationals, an unusual group to be coming over to pay when they could come to this port and claim asylum. But it's just very telling of really exactly what's coming across our border. We just don't know. In this case, these Chinese nationals. Now, last night, Kellyanne Conway, special counselor to the president, was talking about the family units, and that's what we saw a lot of yesterday as well, sneaking over mothers, children, unaccompanied children. Here's what she had to say.
Now, 45% or so are family units are coming in, unaccompanied minors or people who say they're a family coming in from Central America. This is a problem because we are encouraging people to smuggle children over.
It's a problem to the tune of 641 illegal crossings in just this area. We're going to be joined in a little while with the chief of this sector, Manuel Padilla Jr., and we're going to take you for a little ride along, guys.
All right, we're looking forward to that. Griff has been doing some outstanding reporting on the border. It continues live right here on Fox and Friends. Thank you, Griff.
Thanks, Griff. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You know, I mean, look at the images on that bridge are powerful, but you also hear, folks are jumping off the bridge, getting in what the media is calling makeshift rafts. They don't look very makeshift to me, to be honest. Have you ever tried to make a raft? It's not very easy. Makeshift is like kind of a fake word. And then apparently they gathered together those that jumped off the bridge in a park and took a vote that they will continue to try to get to the United States. I don't know if that was a voice vote, a recorded vote, an official vote, a secret ballot vote, not sure. Doesn't look like voting on a lot of levels. So I just feel like there's a narrative around this, that it's an organic thing of people who just have driving. When you look at the seeds of it, it's also very political in this message people are trying to send.
I agree. And now that there's, the UN is coming in that area and allegedly working with those local governments to process those refugees before they come to our border, right? There's a lot of other countries there that are dealing with it and that it's incumbent upon to deal with before it gets so far north and it becomes the United States
problem. And when
problem.
you look at Mexican police, they're trying to deal with it. That is a change from previous caravans heading towards the U.S. Mexico is not on the sidelines anymore. They're engaging. And I believe it's pretty obvious that's because of pressure from President Trump saying enough is enough.
He mentioned it last night at his rally. We'll get to that sound in a second. But the Honduran president, as well as the Guatemalan president, in a press conference yesterday, it said, and this is the Guatemalan president, Jimmy Morales, this migration has political motivations, which is violating the borders and the good faith of the states and, of course, putting at risk the most important thing, people. So those, even the countries of origin and their presidents are recognizing this is a political thing that's happening,
Politics
not necessarily
across the borders, as the president also raises questions at his rally yesterday about who's funding all of this and whether the left is behind that. Then you have politics here at home, the president tweeting out after the rally, if the Democrats would stop being obstructionists and come together, we could gotta roll that. Okay, we could write up and agree to new immigration laws in less than 1 hour. Look at the needless pain and suffering that they are causing. Look at the horrors taking place on the border. Chuck and Nancy, call me.
What I love about that, too, is that it touches on the fact that it's a humanitarian issue the entire way, right? That there's huge incidents of sexual assault along the way, the government speaking to the humanitarian issue about the people. So it doesn't have anything, or I should say a smaller component is the security aspect of the southern border. There's a million other factors that drive into it and that come into play that really the humanitarian issue is if we have that open border, because that's when the crisis occurs.
Yeah, no, you're right. So this is a big issue. Chuck and Nancy, by the way, responding to the president by saying, you don't want to talk about health care, so you're trying to talk about immigration. They're trying to change the conversation. Well, the president yesterday at the rally doubling down on something he's done already, which is he wanted to call it the Tax Cut Act, if you remember that, the first tax cuts that were passed. Turns out he wants more cutting. He's looking at middle-class tax cuts before the midterms. This is what the president had to say yesterday.
We are looking at putting in a very major tax cut for middle-income people. And if we do that, it'll be sometime just prior, I would say, to November, and are studying very deeply right now, round the clock, a major tax cut for middle-income people. Not for business at all, for middle-income people. Kevin Brady's working on it. Paul Ryan is working. We're all working on it. And we're looking at a major tax cut for middle-income people. Who need it?
What was your time frame for that?
I would say sometime around the 1st of November, maybe a little before that.
We don't have a lot of details, but part of it is about trying to make individual income tax cuts that we've seen already permanent, because they're going to expire down the road. There's also talk, do you do that for corporations? That might happen down the road. He doesn't want to do that before the midterms. What they want to focus on before the midterms is people's pocketbooks and say, well, the middle class is going to have more permanent tax cuts.
Which is huge, because that's the one narrative that the Democrats were kind of obsessed with, right, moving into the midterms, that, oh, these tax cuts don't fall for them because it only benefits this higher echelon.
Right.
But here the president is staying on narrative, he's staying on task and saying, well, actually, this is what we're going to do for the middle class. This benefits the people.
Somebody called him crumbs, I think. I can't remember.
Who was that?
I think it was Nancy. We just played a little bit from the president in Nevada yesterday. Well, he wasn't the only guy with a presidential title in Nevada yesterday. Joe Biden was also in Nevada. He was in Las Vegas, a much larger town. There he is with his cool shades. And he stepped up to the podium. And
former vice president.
Former vice president. Thank you. Correct. And he took a few swipes. Listen to Joe Biden yesterday in Nevada.
And they're being shredded by a president who is all about himself. It's all about Donald. It's not about anything else. It's time to get up, lift our heads up, remember who the hell we are. This is America. Let's take back the Senate, and we will change the world as we know it. Now, 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 now.
Big Senate race there. The Republican Dean Heller had been in some trouble. It looks like he's got I don't want to say a comfortable lead, but he's pulled ahead. The president has been there before, pushing for him. And so the president at his own rally was saying, okay, let's fire back at Joe Biden. He loves to label people. He loves to brand people. We remember low energy Jeb, Little Marco, all the rest. It worked in the GOP primaries way back when. Now he's saying, please help me. Help me come up with a new nickname for Joe Biden. Watch.
We call him 1% Joe, because he ran at least twice. I think 3 times. They say twice. I think he ran 3 times. And he never had more than 1%. So we call him 1% Joe. Obama came along and took him off of the trash heap and made him vice president. So we call him either Sleepy Joe Biden or 1%. Which is better? She said creepy Joe. No, I would never do that. I would never insult him like that.
Says I would never do that as he repeats it.
I'm for 1% Joe. I love that.
I think
and I think it is true. Obama plucked him for political reasons, as you always do for vice presidential candidates. I will point out, and the president pointed out these rallies. He said that Joe Biden's crowd count was 193 people. Now, those diligent journalists on the ground were like, well, it was a couple hundred, maybe 400, maybe 500. I got to correct the record. The reality is it was tiny, okay? It was a tiny audience for the vice president of the United States, juxtaposed against the president, who continues to draw thousands and thousands and thousands of
Peter Doocy was on the show yesterday saying in Elko, Nevada, you had people driving from Portland, Oregon area, hours and hours to get there just to get to a quote-unquote
1% Joe got all
they can't vote in Nevada, but
yeah, exactly.
to be clear, but people want to be
But
there.
isn't that interesting? That has to matter at some level as far as intensity and interest in personalities. We live in a personality world. People are drawn to the president. If you're drawing crowds of 200 people in Las Vegas, Nevada, and you're the former vice president, maybe there's just not as much appetite.
Great point, because every pollster we've had on has said, don't look at individual polls, look at intensity. What in the final days, in these last couple of weeks, who wants to get out to the polls? And you wonder, coming out of the Kavanaugh fight, whether the intensity is on the Republican side, whether that will hold or not. But I know we've got a lot of other headlines this morning.
Yes, we'll certainly see what happened. Turning now to your headlines, a Fox News alert. A desperate manhunt is underway after a cop is shot and killed in cold blood. Officer Antoine Toney was ambushed while responding to a report of a suspicious car near a school in Georgia. Police now searching for 18-year-old Tahafri Maynard for murder. A second suspect is in police custody. 30-year-old Officer Toney would have celebrated his third anniversary with the Gwinnett Police Department this week. At least 42 police officers have been killed in the line of duty this year.
Unreal.
New overnight, a floor collapses during a college homecoming party, dropping dozens of people into a basement overnight.
Oh.
30 people were taken to the hospital after the floor caved inside an To replace United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley is narrowed down to 5. The president telling reporters he's interviewing 3 women and 2 men, hoping to replace Haley with another female. She is resigning at the end of the year. Haley shut down rumors about a potential 2020 run for the White House.
All right.
And those are your headlines.
Thanks, Ellen.
The left, meanwhile, going after Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Look at what happened at another restaurant.
Oh, yeah? Why don't you get out of here? Why don't you leave your entire country? Dismissed!
Democrats keep saying, what violence? Well, there you go. This time, people actually fight back. We'll show you that coming up.
Yeah, don't pull that in Louisville. Plus, Republican California congressional candidate Elizabeth Heng accusing her opponent of walking in Nancy Pelosi's shoes, literally.
Votes against the Farm Bill, but supports sanctuary cities. After a lifetime in politics, Jim's no longer one of us. Costa's walking in Nancy Pelosi's shoes. Votes against the Farm Bill, but supports sanctuary cities. Higher taxes, more spending, gun control, and a money-wasting bullet train. Allows San Francisco environmentalists to deny us our water. Nancy Pelosi, yep, but also, surprisingly, Jim Costa. After a lifetime in politics, Jim's no longer one of us. Costa's walking in Nancy Pelosi's shoes.
You got to laugh no matter what side of the aisle you're on. 16 days until the midterms, and this new ad is from our next guest, Republican California congressional candidate Elizabeth Heng. She's connecting her opponent to Nancy Pelosi in kind of a unique way, as you saw. Here with more is that California candidate, Elizabeth Heng, who joins us via Skype. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I got to give you points for creativity, if nothing else, because we see this in district after district around the country, Republicans trying to link the Democratic candidate, or incumbent in this case, to Nancy Pelosi. Why'd you go with the heels?
Well, you know, when I got into this race initially, the message I wanted to say was great things can come from great adversity. I wanted to send this positive message to my district. But after campaign ad out there, we wanted to set our side, point out the differences, but in a lighthearted way, but really talk about how my opponent continues to vote and support the policies of Nancy Pelosi. And our team came up with this, and we're really excited about the message it sends.
How's the race going, and what are voters telling you when you do either town halls, you do various events about that very issue you talked about, which is, you know, come election day, you see a lot of Democrats around the country say, no, I'm not with Nancy Pelosi. I'm my own person. I'm my own man. I'm my own woman. And then when they go back to Washington, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, correct. Based on my opponent's record, he has.
Okay.
He comes back to the district. He consistently says he tries to push himself away from her because it's interesting because she's a political liability. But he supports things such as sanctuary cities, increase in taxes, and water that is not for our agricultural community here.
Elizabeth, I didn't mean to interrupt you. We lost your Skype for a brief second there. You're back. We heard you loud and clear. Didn't mean to interrupt you. Let me make sure I be fair and say what Congressman Jim Costa, the Democrat that you focus on in that ad, what he said about it. He said, I have long believed the Democratic Party needs new leadership. And basically said, you know, again, the point being he's his own man. But when you look at the latest polling, it suggests that he's at 51%. Dangerous for an incumbent. They want to be higher than that, this close to an election, but you're only at 40%. So what are you planning to do in the last 2.5 weeks to close the gap?
On as many doors as possible, chatting to constituents. Key areas they consistently talk about that we need change in this district is we need water for our community because it's an ag-based community, and my opponent has not been effective with that leadership for our valley here. We saw this last week. The president signed an executive memorandum that is going to give more water to our valley here, and all of the members of Congress, whether it was Devin Nunes, Valadao, McCarthy, that are all locally here, they were there working hand in hand with the president to securing water. My opponent was not, and he was too busy attacking me here in the valley for my support of the presidency. And so I'm working as hard as possible to ensure that we get whether it be water, fixing immigration, and education for our valley.
Real quick, did you get a chance to debate him directly? If so, I wonder if you brought any heels?
Well, I will be debating him this Tuesday.
All right.
So I'm really excited about the opportunity.
All right. We'll see whether or not you bring the heels. We reached out to Congressman Costa's campaign. Did not hear back. We'd love to have him on the program, obviously. Good luck in the days ahead. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
All right. Thousands of people in the migrant caravan pushing towards the U.S. border. So how do people feel who came to the U.S. the legal way? What do they think about this? Our panel is next. They've got a lot to say about it. Plus, witches put a hex on Justice Brett Kavanaugh. We told you this was coming. We'll take you there, show you what happened. Coming up.
Because you're mine. Oh.
Good morning again. Some quick headlines. The Washington Post under fire after knowingly reporting the wrong information about Justice Brett Kavanaugh's high school. In the article, Emily Heil writes that Georgetown Prep was hiring a new position to deal with the fallout from the hearings. However, before publishing it, she was told directly by email the position was posted back in July. The story has since been corrected. Meanwhile, in New York, dozens of witches, yes, cast a spell on the newly minted Supreme Court justice. Watch.
Let his days be few. Let his children be fatherless, and his wife a widow. Let his posterity be cut off.
Oh my. Overnight, witches in Brooklyn carved Kavanaugh's name into a black candle, doused it in what they call revenge oil, I'm not making that up, and set it on fire. Christians protested outside by praying against the hex. Pete?
Wow, how do you follow that, Ed? Thanks. Well, this morning, that caravan of migrants inching closer to the U.S. after violent clashes with Mexican police trying to stop them. President Trump blasting Democrats for obstructing his efforts to secure the southern border.
Democrats don't care about what their extremist immigration agenda will do to your communities. The Democrat Party, and it's openly inviting millions of illegal aliens to break our laws, violate our borders, and overwhelm our nation. The Democrats want caravans.
Well, our immigration panel is here to react this morning. Amapola Hansberger, who immigrated from Nicaragua, immigration attorney Esther Valdez, who is the daughter of Dreamers, and Peter Lamage, who fled communism in Albania for America. Thank you all for joining us this morning. Peter, I'm going to start with you. The basic premise that the president makes is that if you want to come here legally, you're welcome to go through the process, but we're not going to be held hostage to mobs attempting to flout our immigration system. Your overall reaction to the debate being had right now?
Actually, I agree with the president. These are not refugees. In order for someone to be a refugee, they're going to have to prove past persecution or well-founded fear of future persecution based on religion, based on nationality, particular social group, political opinion, you name it. These are not refugees. We're enticing people to come to the United States because of the benefits that we offer. We're offering them sanctuary cities, in-state tuition, driver's licenses, you name it. It pays to be legal in the United States. The Democrats are promoting chaos and lawlessness, and I think the president should send in the military and make sure that we turn these people back, send a clear and decisive message that lawlessness is not going to be allowed into our borders, and these invaders who are coming to the United States should be turned back. Otherwise, you're going to see another caravan which is going to be larger than this one unless we deal with this issue very, very decisively.
Well said, Peter. Amapola, tell us your story. You immigrated legally from Nicaragua. Share your story with our viewers a little bit.
Yes, it isn't very difficult to come in legally, and I highly recommend that if you want to come to the United States, that you go to the U.S. Embassy and fill out the forms, go through the vetting process, and it's much easier than coming illegally and then having to pay an attorney to get you to become legal. The act of coming illegally through the border is an act of war. This is invasion, and it should not be permitted. If we permit it, the other caravans will continue to come. We have to stop it. We stop it now, they won't come back.
Strong words. Esther, you know, you're saying this is an orchestrated attempt. Explain that.
It's an orchestrated attempt to overwhelm the U.S.-Mexico border. I am a practicing here at the San Diego-Tijuana region, and there's an 8,000-person waiting for their asylum claims to be heard. Add to that 4,000 more people who allegedly have asylum claims that the Attorney General earlier this year already dictated that gang violence and poverty is not a basis for asylum. So we have to figure out that this is politically motivated, just in time for the midterm elections to overwhelm the U.S. judicial system and the law enforcement, as well as our border.
Peter, is it too hard to come here legally, and that's the reason why people try to bum rush the border?
Actually, it's not. If people want to follow the laws that we have here in the United States to come here legally, I agree with the president that we should have a merit-based immigration system. It's not that hard. There is a waiting period of time that they're going to have to go through and wait online. But in the end, if you want to become an American, if you come here for the Americanism instead of the benefits that we're offering to them, it shouldn't matter how long you wait. I waited in a refugee camp for 9 months. I was processed there. I had to go through background investigation, medical examination, and I was happy to do it. Millions and millions of people are willing to do that, and I don't think we should reward the ones who are violating our laws and our...
Paula, do you have any concerns about folks, carrying another country's flag as they come into our country, about allegiance to the country?
Absolutely. If they carry their country's flag, that means they're coming to conquer us. And I don't think that they should be permitted into the country. It's the Trojan horse, and we do not know who's coming through that border. Terrorists, ISIS, Hezbollah, from the regions of Argentina, Brazil, and Paraguay, which is the second largest compound of Hezbollah. And so we don't know who's coming through the border, and we have to make sure, it's a national security issue, we have to make sure to protect our sovereignty.
It's a great point. Esther, last question real quick. Do you feel like Mexico is doing enough? You're down there on the border. Are they doing enough to address this problem themselves?
What they're doing now is more than they've done in decades. First of all, they're involving the United Nations. They're willing to set up refugee camps to process the asylum claims. And not only that, but they sent federal police in the form of 2 Boeings full of federal police to stop the overwhelming masses that are trying to aggregate across the border in the Guatemalan River. Of course, to no avail. 2,000 have already crossed the river. But it's more than we've seen, and that's why the president tweeted, "Thank you, Mexico."
Peter, Amapola, and Esther, we have some great panels, but this was up there. Great patriots. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, well, Texas Democrats accused of asking illegals to register to vote and even pre-checking the citizenship box as yes. Chris Salcedo joins us to talk about that coming up. And crazed leftists attempt to go after Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell while at having dinner with his wife.
Oh, yeah? Why did you get out of here? Why did you leave the entire country?
But this one ends a little differently because the people fight back. Stick around for it.
I tried so hard to
Unreal. You've got folks there at a restaurant in Louisville going after Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader. He's sitting, I believe, with his wife, Elaine Chao, Cabinet Secretary.
Just trying to have dinner.
We've had Democrats like Maxine Waters saying, don't let them eat at restaurants. Go after Republicans at all costs. And this has happened to Mitch McConnell before. We've shown videos like this. He does have a security detail. Thankfully, so you would hope that in a situation like this, he'll be protected. He's not going to be, severely attacked. But this can happen. I mean, we've seen this before. Steve Scalise has been speaking. The senator's food to go.
But look at all these people out. They're speaking for the rest of America that say, listen, we can have political differences. We don't have to agree, but stay out of my restaurants. Yeah. Like, how is this okay?
Totally. And how can you see that and not call that a mob and a mob mentality as someone films something while shouting something from behind without saying, Senator, I want to talk.
Sick of it.
And when it's filmed, it's obviously a setup.
Yes.
They're there on the other side. Hey, let's get this so we can try to make it go viral.
Yeah.
But you want to go to one of his town hall meetings? Ask him a question about health care. Ask him about illegal immigration. Ask him about tax cuts. Engage him. This is a free country. But don't accost him when he's having dinner with his wife. We saw this with Senator Ted Cruz. And Dean Cain was on Jesse Waters' program last night. He was on Waters World saying, enough is enough. Watch.
People think they're allowed to do this because Maxine Waters is saying confront people, do this in the restaurants, chase your senators down in
There's no real impact here. Senator McConnell's not going to walk out and go, well, that guy made a great point. I think I'm going to change my stance on immigration.
Right.
And be careful, because remember the last time they went after Senator McConnell at an event.
In pushing Saudi Arabia for answers on columnist Jamal Khashoggi. The president doubting the Saudis' shocking admission that Khashoggi died during a fistfight at the Saudi consulate in
You got to vote again.
Wait, that's not on the teleprompter. The plan to leave the European Union in March fails to protect jobs. Candidate Letitia James are all ducking debates, the trio refusing to face their GOP challengers before Election Day. Gillibrand and James claim they backed out of a
Otherwise, for your Sunday, it actually is looking like a beautiful one across much of the country. If you're here stuck in the Midwest, if you're stuck in the Northeast, that's where it's still going to be a little bit on the bitter side. By and large, though, guys, looking like a beautiful Sunday here across the country.
That sounds good.
Yep. Beautiful Sunday to be indoor watching football.
Exactly.
And we want to apologize for Pete being triggered there a moment ago.
Sorry. I do realize I started yelling, and Ed was like, what? I'm here just reading headlines. Why are you
Well, you do drive a Prius, so maybe you're a little triggered
Brexit vote
easily.
already happened, and they're trying to backslide. So you were right. They're trying to backslide on Brexit.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's
all right.
Can't do that. All right. Texas Democrats accused of asking illegals to register to vote and even pre-checking the citizenship box as yes. Chris Salcedo says if Democrats can't cheat, they can't win. He joins us live coming up next.
Plus, Diamond and Silk, Alan Dershowitz, former acting ICE director Thomas Homan, and Ron DeSantis, the Republican. All right. Meanwhile,
the Texas Democratic Party under investigation after being accused of sending out this voter registration application to non-citizens with the citizen box already checked yes.
Here to react is Executive Director of the Conservative Hispanic Society and host of the Chris Salcedo Show, Chris Salcedo. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hey, nice to be here, guys. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. What do you think of this? It just seems downright bizarre.
Well, there is a Salcedo Show axiom that states if Dems can't cheat, they can't win. And this is a perfect example of it. And I can guarantee you if it's happening in the great state of Texas and conservative Texas, imagine what's going on in liberal states. My initial reaction was, wait a minute, there's supposed to be a blue wave going on here, right? If there's a blue wave coming, then why cheat? Back when I wore a different hat, a journalist hat, I did a report on how there are government checks for everything, guys, whether you're proper age to vote, whether you have a felony conviction, whether you're sane enough to vote. But there are no government checks for your citizenship. And the Democrats have been fighting the conservative movement on this tooth and nail, and now we know why, because of incidents like this.
Chris, do you think if they could, Democrats would openly just get rid of the citizenship box completely when it comes to voting?
Oh, sure. Well, you've got San Francisco right now allowing illegal aliens to vote in local elections, canceling out American citizens' votes. They're doing it in Maryland. They're trying to do it in Massachusetts. And there was, as a matter of fact, right back here in Texas, there was another indictment that came down, 4 indictments that came down last week. The Texas Attorney General finding a paid ring of 4 people who were stealing, get this, guys, stealing senior citizens' mail-in ballots, filling them out, and then sending them back in. This is craziness. Now, I called up the AG's office and I asked them, hey, do we know how they were filling out these ballots? They wouldn't tell me for legal reasons, but I talked to an investigative reporter who was looking into this, and he says they were trying to tilt the scales for the Dems.
Yeah. Right. Chris, tell us about the fact that it was the non-citizens that drew light to this, that shed light on this situation, in part because of assumed designation that they want to separate themselves from those non-citizens that are here illegally.
Right. Yeah. Isn't that funny that the Democrats always assume that if you're a non-citizen, you're a particular makeup, that you want to cheat? Well, apparently in Texas, it isn't that way. A lot of non-citizens scratching their heads saying, wait a minute, I'm getting these documents already with this box checked. That doesn't seem right to me. Some, as a matter of fact, I would wager all individuals coming here seeking freedom of the United States want a clean system, unlike apparently the Democrat Party of Texas.
All right. Some common sense and some axioms from the Chris Salcedo Show. Chris, thanks for coming in.
Appreciate it.
You bet. guys.
All right, the president now hinting at tax cuts 2.0, and they may be coming soon. We'll talk about it.
Plus, remember last week when we were complaining about the pizza we had on set?
It was bad. We're in New York City, and I think we found the saddest looking pizza. This doesn't look like real New York City pizza.
Can we get some better pizza on set than frozen pizza?
I got grief from our producers, but it was frozen pizza.
Made in the microwave, too. Yeah. This morning, we're getting a pizza redemption with some real, authentic New York City pies. Artichoke.
Adam's already jumping in.
That's amore indeed. I can't wait to dive in. Adam.
Welcome back. Well, last weekend, Ed and I were complaining about the very pathetic frozen pizza that we had on set made in the microwave. Watch.
We're in New York City, and I think we found the saddest looking pizza. This doesn't look like real New York City pizza, guys.
No. This is
gonna try?
This is frozen pizza done in the microwave.
Here,
Can we get some better pizza on set than frozen pizza? I don't know what the calorie count on this, but it's not the best pizza.
Yeah, well,
this is good because you won't eat it, so you won't go over the calorie count. So, in fairness to our producers, at 5 in the morning, they couldn't find a place open. We've now found a place because we want authentic New York City pizza on set, as well as some tips on how you can recreate this at home. You see these beautiful pizzas, but how can you actually do it at home?
Right, and so now we have these amazing guests, Francis Garcia and Sal Bastille, the founders of Artichoke Bastille's Pizza and Lions and Tigers and Squares.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here, you guys.
People now have these like pizza ovens in their backyard.
Yep.
In addition to the regular grill, you've got a pizza grill, but they don't know what are the keys to the great crust. How do you actually make this amazing pizza?
So New York City style pizza uses a deck oven, which has a really thick stone that gives it that really nice cooked all the way through bottom. You know, as opposed to a Neapolitan oven that cooks super hot and you don't get that bottom heat.
So for example, this one's got a very thin crust. So talk about the comparison here too. This one looks like it's got a massive crust that's going to bust that calorie cap over in the UK.
I'll take it. Yep.
Well,
Who's counting today?
Nobody.
No
Shouldn't be counting.
Yeah.
The Brits.
But so how do you?
So we make a thicker crust for the artichoke pie because it's very rich and creamy. So to support all that sauce, we give it a sturdier crust, a bigger crust. This is our crab pie right here. This is it's actually made with surimi, but nevertheless, it's delicious.
Crab pie. Now talk about the mustard one too. Apparently that's a signature one.
So
I've never had mustard on my pizza.
At Lions and Tigers and Squares, Detroit-style pizzeria that we opened about 4 months ago. Detroit Lions, Detroit Tigers, Detroit Square Pizza.
All right, I get
Wizard
it.
of Oz. All right, but
I like it.
we use mustard in place of the sauce. So the mustard is the acid.
Good.
It's got a drop of corned beef just for some smoky flavor, a little bit of sauerkraut for some crunch. It's outrageous.
And how much of your recipes are just self-exploring, and how much are you honoring some family lineage or honoring the past at all?
A little bit of both on that.
A little bit of both, yeah, exactly. You know, a lot of it is just experimenting, and you know, a lot of it is things that have been passed down through generations.
So the reason we were talking about pizza the other day is because the UK wants to ban the amount of calories you can have in a meal. So can you confirm, is this 8,000 calories or 10,000 calories?
All I can tell you is it's a lot of deal and meal cards. You got to have a big stack of them.
But obviously, people don't have to eat the whole pizza. You can have 1 or 2 slices and ration it out.
Some people do.
Next time, put this in the freezer and have this as a frozen pie instead of that Frisbee you guys ate last week.
That Frisbee.
It was terrible.
So what do you recommend to people when you say, you pile it on? So this is a thicker crust, holds a lot more, obviously. You got artichokes. It seems like you have multiple kinds of cheese on there. People like to put more and more on the pizza. What would you say about layering all that? You got meatball, regatta cheese, and onions on there, right?
You know what? Just pile it on. Whatever you love to eat. You know, pizza is a blank canvas. If you like, I don't know, clam chowder, put it on top of a crust and throw it in the oven.
Sal,
Best
Francis,
recipe.
Whatever you want.
You guys have the best attitude. The mustard sauce was great.
Thank you very
line for
much.
this at 2 a.m. So thank you for bringing it.
My pleasure.
Artichoke. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, the president and former vice president out on the campaign trail. We'll talk about that. Also, we'll talk about whether there's a preview of Biden versus Trump. Diamond and Silk.